I'd like to call the meeting of the Colerain Township Zoning Commission to order, Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. And if we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Ellig, can we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mrs. McMullen. Mr. Faring. Mr. McMullen.
Present.
Ms. McMullen, excuse me. Mrs. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Gary.
Here.
Mr. Grody. With Mr. Faring and Mr. Grody being absent, we'd like to seat our one alternate, Mr. Westfall.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. So with Mr. Grody out and with Mr. Faring out, I will be running the meeting. So let's all be patient with me, because, yeah. Next on the agenda is the oath of office, and the attorney is stuck in traffic and will be here shortly. So we will come back to swear in our new alternate, Mr. Tim Bachman. Election of officers is next on our agenda. And with that, we will need to have a nomination for chairperson.
I nominate Mr. Algarodi, who isn't present but made his wishes known to me beforehand.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second for Mr. Algarodi for chairperson for 2022. Mr. Allig, can we have a vote, please?
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Gary.
Yes.
Mr. Westfall.
Aye.
Ms. McMullen.
Yes. And in turn, we would also need to have a nomination for vice chair.
You interested in that? I nominate Ms. McMullen.
Second.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second.
Ready for roll call, Miss?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Gary.
Yes.
Mr. Westfall.
Aye.
And Ms. McMullen.
Yes. All right, so next on our agenda, we have the approval of minutes from Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. Did we have a motion to approve or any comments?
So move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I was not at that meeting, so I can't.
That's fine. Mr. Allen, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Gary.
Abstain?
Mr. Westfall.
Abstain.
Ms. McMullen.
Yes.
Okay, so we had 3, so it would pass. Pardon me, correct me, wait, 2 abstains, is that correct?
That's correct.
2 votes?
So
2
it
yeses and
did-
2 abstains.
Okay, excellent, just making sure.
All right. Mr. Ellig, was there anything for number 3 on the agenda for public address for things not on the agenda?
There is not.
And any final development plans to review?
No, ma'am, there's not.
All right, here is the part of the agenda that I do not think we can proceed with
the hearing?
the public hearing to swear in those that wish to speak.
That is a good point.
Attorneys.
Attorneys. I believe, and I'll double check in our organization here, we can set some time, appropriate time, and maybe we have to make a motion to table any further action.
Ms. McMullen? I signed in for citizens address. Is that not going to happen?
Citizens address is not on the agenda. You would,
Well, for-
for, I think we might have an attorney walking in. At least I see a briefcase.
that is Ms. Shaw. And that is correct. You would be allowed to do the public address. That was my bad. I apologize for that. Let me grab this sign-in sheet real quick.
So we'll get her.
Yep.
Absolutely. Perfect.
All right. And the commissioner.
Thank you.
If I may request of the commission, if we could sort of press pause and hit the rewind button a little bit. Go back maybe to under the first item, the oath of office. If we could perform the oath of office for Mr. Bachman. As soon as Sarah's ready, whenever you're ready,
Yep.
Sarah, just let us know.
The podium?
He would, but you would.
Okay.
Legal can just administer from here if you like, or go up to it if you like, whatever you want to do.
Hey, Mr. Bachman, if you'll repeat after me. I, Timothy Bachman,
I, Timothy Bachman,
solemnly swear that I will uphold
solemnly swear that I will uphold
the Constitution and laws of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Ohio,
Constitution and laws of the State of Ohio,
and the laws and resolutions of Colerain Township,
and the laws and resolutions of Colerain Township,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of an alternate member on the Zoning Commission
of an alternate member on the Zoning Commission
in and for Colerain Township,
in and for Colerain Township,
Hamilton County,
Hamilton County,
State of Ohio,
State of Ohio,
so help me God.
so help me God.
And if you'll come over here and sign for me. I have a pen if you do not have one. Just sign where you have your name.
Mr. Bachman, would you like to introduce yourself at all? Would you like me to take a stab at it? What would you like? Okay. Correct me if I have any mistakes in here. So Mr. Bachman was kind enough to apply for the alternate position. He has over, is it 29 years?
And then some.
And then some, as a Development Services Director with Fairfield, Ohio. So well-versed with planning, and especially grateful in the state of Ohio. And then that ended around 2016?
Yep.
Correct. And then he moved to Ready, Cincinnati, where he's a Senior Manager for Business Development and Project Management. So a very good understanding of planning, very good understanding of business development. Oh, anything else? That was a very
No, I am
good,
currently retired and retired from 2 positions, so happy to be here, happy to serve in this capacity on the Zoning Commission.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Yep.
All right, so next on the agenda is zoning text amendment, ZA 2022-01, a zoning text amendment to permit charitable donation containers. And with that, we need a motion to open a public hearing.
if I may interject?
Yes.
And somebody wish to
Yeah,
do
if we
public
could,
address?
that's my bad. After introducing Mr. Bachman, if we could sort of reset, and I know we have a dynamic meeting already, which is good. We'll start with item number 3, the public address. I had missed Miss Wright on that, and I hope she'll forgive me for missing her on that list. So if we may open the public address portion, if you
Duly noted.
would allow.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we will open the public address, and I apologize. All right, so Ms. Stephanie Wright, please.
Good evening, Board and newly seated board member.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions, just general housekeeping. Who was the attorney to this evening?
I would have to refer to Mr. Alec.
Can we have that? Can we know that? Because that should be in the minutes, and I haven't heard who our attorney is.
Yeah, my name is Sarah Schild. I'm with Schroeder, Mandrell, Barbier, and Power. Same firm as Larry Barbier and Scott Solomon.
Great, welcome, thank you. Also, does this zoning board follow Robert's Rules of Law as well?
Rules of order,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, I was just curious because I noticed when you called roll, it was out of order. Do you not do it alphabetically?
I do not do it alphabetically.
Okay, so then you don't follow that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm addressing them, not a resident.
I will look if it's supposed to be I didn't think it was supposed to be alphabetically.
Just
I wasn't
asking a
aware.
question.
Is it supposed to be alphabetically?
I'm just asking a question. If that is, could you check into that?
So you said I wasn't following rules of order because I didn't call it alphabetically. I assumed you were saying it is supposed to be alphabetically. You're not saying that?
Well, that just happened in our Board of Trustees meeting last week, and it was addressed by Matt Wallard, our trustee, and that was established that was how the Robert's Rules of Order were conducted. So I'm just checking.
To be alphabetical?
Yes.
I appreciate you letting us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, if something is voted on 2-2, 2 not to pass and 2 to pass, it passes?
That would not be the case, no.
Because you said the minutes were approved. So 2 people abstained and 2 people
And
voted.
abstain is not a vote against it.
Oh, okay, great. And then, new board member, I'm sorry, I don't have your name, Buchanan? Bachman. Mr.
Tim
Bachman,
Bachman.
were you interviewed by the zoning commission employee?
Yes.
Represented tonight?
Yes.
Okay, because I didn't think he recognized you or knew who you were when you came in.
Well, I was on the phone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So next, we do have a public hearing scheduled, and that is for ZA 2022-01, zoning text amendment to permit charitable donation containers. And to open a public hearing, we do need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Alec, can we have a vote, please?
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Guerin?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall? Mr. Bachman? Yes. Ms. McMullen?
Yes. All right, so we have opened a public hearing. And is there anyone who wishes to speak during the public hearing? Can you please stand?
Do you swear that the testimony or evidence that you shall provide tonight shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Were you, oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were wanting to get sworn in too. All right. Mrs. Wright, if you'd like to approach the podium and as required to state your name and your address for the record.
Yes. My name is Stephanie Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. I live at 3729 Blue Rock Road. And I'm speaking tonight about the charitable donation bin containers that are plaguing our community with litter and unnecessary trash and illegal dumping. I've been tracking this for over 2 years and have brought it to numerous trustees' attention that something needs to be done about this. I even went as far as myself with a few other residents to rent a billboard on Colerain Avenue at our expense, out of pocket, to alert the community, the residents, the administration, anyone that would listen, that we got an issue here. And that was February of 2020. Fast forward, here we are to January 2021, and unfortunately, it hasn't gotten any better. Matter of fact, I think it's gotten worse. I'm fortunate enough to live on a very busy road, and I have 2 of those lovely donation bins that I get to view daily from my front porch. They are not set back according to what's presented this evening as far as distance from the road. They are not maintained. And every day I get to drive by and see what the twins, that's what I refer to them as, have out there for me to look at that day. I've called the donation company listed on the bin, and they've told me to have a blessed day. I contacted the church where the bins reside. They offered me no solution, and truthfully probably could care less if I called. Needless to say, I help the church out because I pick up garbage in their parking lot every day. So as a resident, I would have appreciated a little more response from them, but that didn't happen. I've been complaining about this through the Township CSR system, like I said, for years. I understand that there's some legalities involved in the donation bins, and you can't just take them away, people's rights. It's not about the bin. It's about people's inability to do the right thing. Unfortunately, in the society we live in today, people don't always make the right choices. So sometimes you have to be the bad guy. And I think that now falls on the zoning department to implement some policy procedure that's going not only to be written on a piece of paper, but enforced. It's another huge issue we have in Colerain Township. We have a lot of initiatives. Nothing ever goes anywhere. So I appreciate that you're trying to do something, that you've heard my plight, you've heard residents complain about this, but this isn't the solution. It's a step, but it's not the final solution, in my opinion. As far as donation bins go and charitable contributions, since 70s, I only shop secondhand. Everything that I have on, except for my jewelry, my undergarments, and my shoes, come from a secondhand store. So I'm all about it. I'm all about donating, helping people out, recycling, reusing. These bins are a hindrance and an eyesore to our township. And I really don't think that the zoning staff has the staff to go out and measure bins, make sure that they're taken care of, call and enforce it. It's a big miss. It's not going to happen, I can tell you. It's not going to happen. I wish, but it's not. The bins themselves are basically swap meets. You drive by, you go, oh, look at that. That's a bunk bed. Person pulls in the lot, picks up the bunk bed, and then out of their car comes a broken recliner. It's an ever-revolving circle of litter and illegal dumping. I watch it. I've reported it. It happens. And then looking over this text amendment here, there seems to be some things missing on there. Who put this together?
I did, Ms. Wright.
You did?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because it looks very similar to the one that Marty Kohler put together as well. Okay.
Did Mr. Kohler present this? at any
No,
point in
but
time?
it was included in a packet that was presented to the zoning board months ago. I was just curious if it was similar. So you've kind of said now that with this amendment that you're going to enforce this. They have to have visible addresses, emails, this kind of thing on there. It has to be cleaned up within 48 hours of being reported. Let's be realistic. It's not going to happen. So as a resident who is tired of looking at these dumpsters, please don't pass this. I think we're on the right track. You've been dilly-dallying with it for over a year. I want to see something done. This isn't the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. And before we close the public hearing, just wanted to offer one more time, anyone else in the audience wishes to speak? Okay, you will have to be sworn in, so if you plan to speak, please go ahead and stand up and she can,
If both of you wouldn't mind just standing and raising your right hands. Thank you. You swear that the testimony evidence that you shall provide tonight shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you both.
okay.
Hi,
Ms.
my name's
Hurst.
Debbie Hurst with Compton Recycling. I myself, on these donation bins, I have picked up probably over 1,000 pounds of trash. I've went to these sites early in the morning, 6:45 a.m., and picked up the cribs, the baskets, the vacuum cleaners, the bags of trash, and I have taken loads, sometimes 3 loads in the morning, to my dumpster. I pay for the disposal of the trash that's left out in our shopping parking lots where we shop, and our restaurants where we eat, not something I want to see. In fact, all the ones with bins now, I don't shop there, so most of my shopping's not done in Colerain anymore. But I've picked up 3,000 pounds of trash from January 21 to November 1st of 21 off the roads, myself. These donation bins is nothing but a dumping site. I've spent hours and times with other residents here, watching them dump. We have videos of people pulling up and dumping. Northbrook Shopping Center, Lori, yourself, you know, was the worst. That was like a used furniture, Rumpke site lot. It was, more dumping gets done between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. It's not necessarily at night. It's done during the day where people pull up and they think, oh, look, they're giving a donation. And they just dump whatever. It says clothes and shoes. Clearly, you can see. Clearly, you can see their email. Do they answer the email when you call? No. Do they answer the phone when you call? No. Do they return your call? No. And it's like Stephanie Wright said, have a blessed day. Move on. It's more than 48 hours. It's sometimes a week. I had to stop picking up Matt T-Stort. I was enabling them to dump more. So I stopped cleaning up the donation bins in Kroger parking lot, Stone Creek, Northbrook Plaza. Thank God that one finally got moved. You know, it was enough. They had to have 2 trucks sometimes to clean the mess up. I mean, that's not fair. I mean, do you want to see garbage where you go eat, where you go shop? It's bad enough we got it up and down Colerain Avenue, not every road in Colerain. We can't get control of that. Now we have it in the parking lots. So to pass this, anything for them, they need to go. They just need to go. It's been going on. You can read about it. It's Special Olympics, all it's for the Special Olympics. I don't know if anyone's investigated. They just say, oh, they get a small percentage for putting their name on there. That's all. It's not going to the Special Olympics. It's not even going to our country. It's going to other countries. So it's just everybody using the veterans. Oh, it's for the veterans. They get a very minimal percentage. The rest, someone else is getting it. This cleanup and the trash, it's not fair to its township. It's not fair as residents for us to see this day in, day out. It's bad enough we're on the road picking up daily. You know, when where's our tax money? I don't know, but it shouldn't be going for me or anyone else to clean up the shopping parking lots and where we eat. You know, so to pass it, I wouldn't, they need to go. Dumpsters, they need to go. It's just a dumping site. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you. Ma'am, did you want to? Okay. And for the record, you'll say your name and address, please.
Yes, ma'am. I am Veronica Kramer. It's my husband, Sean Spencer, there. We live at 2526 Compton Road. I'm actually the neighbor to Debbie over there. I just wanted to, I don't know that I'm educated on this matter to speak about it, but I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in. I feel like we have enough thrift stores in the area to accommodate the donations. And it really is an eyesore. I've kind of been noticing it myself, and it just, I love Colerain Township. I do. I really love the area that I'm in. I'm in a business commercial property, so we're high traffic too, and I see the dilemma of the litter on the streets and all that good stuff. And I know it's not like a super high priority issue, that there's other more important things to be focusing on, but I do see a simple solution, and that is just to not allow this to continue. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
Okay, last call. Anyone else? Okay, then we will need a motion and a second to close the public hearing, please.
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion that we close the session.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mr. Gearing, were you the second on that? Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Ready for roll call?
Yes, please.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Gearing?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye.
Mr. Bachman?
Yes.
Ms. McMullen?
Yes. Okay. And now we will open the discussion to zoning commission members.
I appreciate the comments that we've heard, okay? Yes,
If
sir.
I may, can we make a motion to open that discussion to the board members, if we may, just to, if you
So
wouldn't mind?
moved.
That's all right, that's all right.
Thank you.
Just before, Mr. Gearing,
Second?
Thank you. Yes.
who made the motion? I missed that, I'm so sorry. You did, thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Gearing seconded, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
And again, sorry, everyone. My first meeting.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Gearing?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye.
Mr. Bachman?
Yes.
Ms. McMullen?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for that.
All right. Mr. Garing, continue,
Now, I
please.
appreciate the comments that we've heard. Yeah, I, as disgusted with these things is I think, everything we've heard here. The issue, though, is if we ban them at this point, I think we so open ourselves for litigation. And I don't have any problem with litigation. I do have a problem with the delay in litigation that it would cause. In other words, anybody can litigate over anything, but I don't want to wait 3 years to address the issue. And it seems to me that if we put something like this in place and it doesn't address the issue, then in the future we can look at an outright ban and it would have legs to stand on to say, hey, listen, we tried to regulate it fairly and that didn't serve the purpose, and we move on. So I think it negates, or it lessens. I'd be interested what the litigator thinks, what the attorney thinks about it, but I think it would lessen our chances for litigation. And I think address the issue if it's enforced. The key is enforcement. So the first thing we've got to do, I assume, is assuming this is passed not by us, but also by the trustees, that we need to do a notification to those who have these things with a fair amount of time that says, come into compliance or else, and then we need to get out there and enforce it. Is that a fair assumption of what the process would be for implementation?
That is almost spot on, yep.
And I
And
think,
additionally, I
Go
apologize,
ahead.
sir. Just to clarify, one main point would be that the only action to take place tonight would be just for a recommendation to approve the proposed text amendment, a recommendation to approve with modifications, or a recommendation to the Board of Trustees to deny. So nothing's being voted into place tonight or anything. It's simply the zoning commission saying, we took all this information in, and this is the decision or the guidance we would give to the Board of Trustees. Just to be clear on that part, but for anyone who wasn't.
but I agree with everything that was said, and I think this would, in the long run, be the faster way in order to address the issue, if enforcement is there.
One question I had, more of a technical question, is that of a non-conforming use, excuse me. That it was stated as part of the discussion of the public hearing that some of the ones that are there now, I believe, and maybe a church use, will probably not meet the setbacks that are discussed in this particular ordinance or this particular resolution. My question to you all as staff is that true that do we believe that the existing containers will be non-conforming?
There are some that are in place that are not permitted as they are, that if under this, they would be non-conforming.
That they would be allowed to be situated where they currently are? In other words, not in compliance with this resolution?
That is
So
correct.
some of the issues of maybe it's a setback issue or a visibility issue or in the driveway where you state that that's inappropriate, that won't be solved by this.
That part would not particularly be solved, that's correct.
And that's just the way it goes in terms of zoning and non-conforming use.
It is,
I think that's important for people to understand that, though, that's out there as a real issue.
we generally sometimes play catch-up to things, and sometimes more often than we like.
I understand.
We play catch-up. So now, we would still have, any bad actor could still be prosecuted as a violation, which is, again, is a process, not as fast as a lot of people like, not as fast as I would like. But, you know, that's sometimes a good thing too. However, anyone who, the good actors, people who were following the rules, they would continue and sort of be encouraged. Those who weren't, we'd hopefully get them out of this area, maybe go to an area that doesn't have regulations in place.
Since I'm the new guy, maybe I can be the dumb new guy. So the question is, I get what you're trying to do. I understand everything. I've read this several times. I've made some notes on tweaking it. And I wasn't sure what I was going to get because I'm the new guy. I know nothing about this. The question, though, that I have for you is, it seems like potentially there is a lot of staff activity to enforce this. And I assume that'd be your department that enforces it.
It's a little unique here in Colerain Township. Technically, code enforcement falls under the police department.
Okay.
It's a
So
recent change, sir.
I'm sure there's been internal discussion about that. So could you let the board know, or at least myself, the plan of enforcement? Is that something you have the staff to do? Is that something you anticipate, knowing what the issue is, knowing what you've written here? Will that be an issue in terms of staff and the involvement of staff?
I would say that generally in the township, the level of enforcement far exceeds the manpower or people power. That being said, without having any legislation, any regulations as it is, we really kind of lack a lot of ability to regulate, any good or bad actor in this case. And again, sort of, we would continue we do a very good job of code enforcement, I believe, in Colerain Township. I know we have a lot of challenges. I'm not trying to
Sure.
sugarcoat it.
No, I'm not, and I'm not setting you up. I'm just trying to understand.
Yep. But I do believe it's something that we would definitely, we'd be able to start getting a handle on, whereas right now, we don't really have a whole lot of tools to go after other than just general violations, and we have no way to kind of keep the whole sense of this is to promote good actors, right? Good companies, good organizations who are gonna, follow the rules and then deter those who won't.
Sure.
Hopefully,
And
we would reduce that.
I guess as I understand it, there's no regulations on these containers currently
That
within
is
the
correct.
township.
That is correct. And Mr. Guerin brought up an excellent point. There is the religious use aspect of these that can come into play a lot, which not our municipality, but other municipalities have faced that as
I
well.
understand. Okay.
So I know a question that I had is, number 5 mentions the size of the bins. It talks about a maximum, but what I was curious about is, does a charitable donation container, we put things that you can donate, books, clothes, shoes, and so forth. We put in here things that you can't, mattresses, of course, tires, appliances, that kind of thing. But what I don't see is there any kind of distinction between some of these giant bins that you see? The Special Olympics bin was mentioned, but does that go down all the way down to the small, like little free library boxes or the side-by-side block ministry collection boxes? Do we have some type of idea of what we really mean by the donation boxes?
Yes, we do have an idea of what we're trying to limit. We're trying to limit sort of the maximum size, and there wasn't really a whole lot of attention given to anything very small, like the little book boxes where you like the, almost large mailbox size, if that's what you mean. Those are the ones I've seen in my neighborhoods. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
Right.
But typically, we were, what we definitely didn't want were, sort of large dumpsters set out as a large collection. But we're looking to try and keep it sort of small, sizable. I would call it a typical donation container, looks something like what you see on the screen here, to where it limits the size of any type of object that can be inserted into it, so as to try to, stay away from mattresses, TVs, that kind of thing, and keep those in the trash receptacles where they belong. Did that sufficiently answer your question?
It does,
Or-
but I don't know if we need to clarify more, not just what it means, but also what it doesn't mean. The reason that I ask is because 2 driveways away from my house, there's a little free library box, and people leave things other than books there. So I don't know if we need to, if we're making a very broad donation container bin, because that is a donation container bin by default, you're donating books into that bin. So I don't know if we need to clarify a bit more what type of container. If we're just looking at the maximum size, then that means everything from this size up to the maximum size is allowable. Then for the little bins, or the little free libraries, the side-by-side, we mentioned the fees and so forth, and side-by-side has probably close to 20 of their donation book bins. So it would be about $2,000 we would be collecting in fees for each of their book collection bins that they have. So I don't know if we're going so broad as now we're capturing those flies in our web that we are unintentionally not wanting to capture, but we are capturing them.
So that is a very excellent point. When I wrote this, and I did write this, I definitely did not think about those donation bins. Additionally, in this language, I would suggest we make a modification maybe to the minimum size on here, because in this proposed amendment, we're looking only at being an approved use only in a business district or a residential district where a conditional use has been granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So it's an excellent observation, your point, and definitely the whole reason that we do this. There's some things that me sitting in my little office over there, I don't think about, even though I see we have those in the subdivision where I live. And we definitely are not intending to on any of these, first off, to make money, as you mentioned, $2,000. Yeah, you know, it's by no means an income stream or anything like that. And I even put language in here where if they hadn't had a violation in a year, the fee could be waived the following annual re-up time. So I definitely would ask, if I'm maybe so bold to do so, that you take one of the alternate. You have three paths, right? You can approve with modifications, or recommend to approve with modifications, recommend to approve or deny, excuse me, to the board of trustees. I would ask that we take this time to add a modification like that to that. So you know, maybe if it was under 4 cubic feet, that this wouldn't really be applying to that, or something like that.
Right, maybe in 16.2, maybe just the definition of what a box is or isn't.
And what is not. And we could definitely, if you like, add something along the lines that, you know, this is not intended to be sort of the, what would you call that? The book, I'll search for better terminology, but basically, you know, we are intending to capture litter points and larger, almost industrial size or industrial designed charitable donation containers, not the neighborhood children's book kind of thing. But that definitely can add language into the definition to clarify what we're not aiming to go after on these, if that makes sense, or if that was
Right.
legible.
I mean, the definition does mention metal, steel, similar products capable of resisting the effects of weathering. But I know the side-by-side donation bins, those are a trash can that are painted, you know, the kind of like the Rumpke type with the top lid that you open. And then the smaller little free libraries are just wood. And they're very attractive and, you know, good for our area. So I just don't want to impose some of these onto, you know, just those unintentional, you know, they just get trapped in what we're trying to do here.
That's the purpose of this whole process, is to hopefully, you know, make Colerain Township as great as we can incrementally, but without getting those collateral issues like that in the mix. So definitely I will clarify to address that this is not intended to regulate or prohibit the small neighborhood donation drop-off points like that. We're looking more at industrialized drop-off containers.
I had just two comments, and both of them, I wanted to really underscore and hit hard what I heard in the public hearing, and when I was reading this today, it was kind of hitting me. So they have to do with the surrounding area, so that trash or that debris or that stuff that we heard testimony on that gets left around it. So if you would indulge on 7B, right now it states the name, address, and contact telephone number of the company or organization operating, servicing, or responsible for maintaining the charitable donation container. I would add and associated surrounding area, so it's not only the container, but the area around it for the maintenance. Because I think that's what I heard, and when I see these, I see that as the issue with regard to the concern. And I would hit it again on page 2, item 12, where you mentioned the collection, accumulation, or storage of other materials. I would add there, outside of the charitable donation container. So right now, it's not clear that that's so right now it reads the collection, accumulation, or storage of other materials, including but not limited to appliances, mattresses, or furniture is prohibited. I'm trying to say the collection, accumulation, or storage of other materials that are outside of that container, which are the problems. So I don't think it's within the container that we have the concern, it's outside. So I'm just trying to clarify those issues of what you've written and what I heard today.
Thank you very much. I'll make those modifications.
I have several questions. What is allowed to be in the bins? I mean, do you give an example of what can and cannot be in the bins?
The list of what could or could not be in there obviously would be very broad. It's more of what we're hoping to catch to go in there, being like clothing, books, maybe some shoes, generally recycled items, and donated items, not recycled items. I'm probably going to stumble through this more than I'd care to, as I've never really used one of these before. But basically,
Right, most of the bins have on the outside of the box what they want to collect. Generally, it's shoes and clothes.
They do, and they generally are that. However, Mrs. Smith brings up a great point. Sometimes, not being clear is being very unkind, right? So if we need a little bit better language in here that says, narrowing down explicitly what we're at least trying to avoid have stored in them versus what we are. As far as I know, I don't want to have any good examples of items that you can't drop off into there. They generally are left to whatever they advertise they're collecting. But that's probably a very good point. One of those things where I know there's some state laws that apply. You can have batteries, certain types of batteries, that kind of stuff. Toxic materials. There's the things we call obvious, and that would definitely fall in under other regulations that really weren't in the scope of what we're talking about here. The general gist of what we're trying to catch so far were the places that have been turned into trash sites. So I apologize on my shortcomings on that if I didn't really start sculpting this down to kind of get a little bit more nitty-gritty, like maybe I should have, as far as what is allowed, what isn't allowed. But at the same time, I'm not sure how we could say what isn't allowed as long as it's not violating some other regulation, if that makes sense. So, like, as long as it was non-toxic, I'm not sure if we have the ability to regulate what could or could not be dumped. And Sarah, if you have any idea on that, please let me know. But is there something specific that we should include or not include?
No, I just wanted to know. I mean, I've heard them speak and say that several different items were in the thing. I wanted to know what was allowed, what was not allowed to be in.
Right, actually on the picture up there, you can see one of them says clothing,
Clothes,
shoes.
I mean, but how do we know that they're actually putting those items in those slots?
We
I
would,
don't think that the point is really what goes in the box, it's what's being left outside of the box.
yeah,
I would agree with that.
it would be a very tricky thing to do to say, you can only put containers out to collect shoes or to collect clothes. If it's any item that's allowed to be donated or recycled by state law, I don't think that well, I know we can't, we can't restrict it to say, you know, you can't donate clothes here. It can only be shoe, or, but, you know, they're the, I would say again, I call them obvious, but sometimes we need to be more clear on that. Anything prohibited by any other regulation, health regulation, would not be permitted in there, and they would not be permitted to, you know, when they come to apply, and we ask the question, you know, generally, what are you gonna have in there? It's like, well, you know, we want toxic waste and batteries and you know, other hazardous material. I'm sorry?
What's to stop them from putting batteries and other items in?
Nothing stops anyone from dumping those out of their car as it is. We have no ability to stop that.
Where are the boxes located? Right now, I don't see any in my neighborhood, but where are they allowed to be?
They're allowed to be in any business district, as proposed here, proposed in text amendment, it'd be in any business district or any residential district if it was an approved use as a religious place of worship.
So who's supposed to monitor it? Is the zoning supposed to monitor it? Is the particular person that put the item there supposed to monitor and clean up the area?
As it's written in here, the applicant or the operator is the one responsible for operating and maintaining the donation container bin. If we, and this is how it would go in any approved use now, if we received reports that somebody was not following that, like we do often, then we would start the process of the code enforcement. And then that's sort of why there's sort of language in here that what a lot of people has mentioned before, what a lot of these organizations do is they basically slap the sticker of a charitable organization on the side of it, and people believe they're donating an item to that charity. Let's just say Salvation Army, not specifying or harping on one or the other, just as an example. They may have their logo on the side, so you would believe that your clothing you're donating is going to the Salvation Army. And in reality, I think it's been proven kind of nationwide that a very small percentage of the proceeds of the sales actually go to the organization that's listed on the side, which is why in here, I said, not only is the organization contact representative supposed to be there, but what if there's a separate company, which there often is, operating the donation container, their contact information has to be listed on the side of these containers.
So how long can they leave it, whatever they got there? How long are they allowed to leave it in the spot?
Well, typically, it's never, you mean like, just to clarify, you mean something prohibited to be dumped there, like an old mattress left on the side?
That's one example, yes.
According to this, they have 48 hours to clean it up from whenever it's dropped off. And again, what we run into is the issue of large area, hard to patrol everything, hard to catch everything, but when we do get a notice of, you know, that there's been an issue here, that that spot gets elevated, that location gets elevated, we keep a closer eye on it. If we get 2 violations within a 1-year period, we revoke their certificate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
For 7B, which is the contact information, should we add in there that we need a local person to contact? Because how many times has a number been dialed and it goes to someone, say, in California who doesn't care what's going on in little Colerain Township, Ohio, but maybe someone locally may care? I'm not saying that's the case, but it might put a little bit of ownership onto, we need this cleaned up.
Sir, do you see any issue if we allowed that language?
I have not researched this, and I am not sure who typically is the company behind these various boxes. My speculation would be that it could be some sort of national company that these private property owners allow to put their boxes on their property. So I would think it'd be incredibly difficult to require that a private property owner only work with a company who has someone local to be responsible for the.
Well, meaning that someone local is coming to empty the bins and someone local is required to clean up around the bins. So I feel like we should have that local contact person's name and number, kind of cut out the middleman.
I
Where
agree
if
with where
there's-
you're coming from. I just think it would be hard because it's private property owners choosing to put these boxes on their property. And so who's ever responsible for the box may not have a local person. I don't think we can necessarily require that a private property owner only be able to work with a box company that has a local person available to clean up. I think at the end of the day, the goal is to say, we don't care if they're local or not. You got 48 hours notice, you should have someone come get it, whether it's a local person or not. But I get where you're coming from.
Thank you.
I think, at least from my experience, zoning is getting a little bit of a bad rap here. You know, before I joined this commission, I could be speaking up at that podium, because I had an issue with an ordinance we had here, and it looked to me like it wasn't being enforced. After considerable research over an extended period of time, I found out it was being enforced. That in fact, the penalties and fines that had been submitted to the person by the zoning commission far exceeded the value of the property. So I then went to the trustees, and the trustees changed hands, okay? And the new trustee group, about 4 years ago, had the wherewithal to actually stand behind those enforcements, and actually at that point went back against that property owner and went to court and seized the property due to the value of all of the fines he had been given and had not paid, with the zoning commission not having the right to take him to court, and in fact seized his property, and now it's not an issue. So if my experience holds true in the future, which I hope it is, we don't get notice of, hey, listen, this person's been fined 2 or 3 or 4 times, but if we put some teeth in here, let's say the example that we give them 48 hours to clean it up and they don't, my expectation is that on, you know, within the 49th or 50th hour, we've got a wrecker out there picking up that box and hauling it off ourselves.
I don't think, I wish we had that ability. I don't think by law, by Ohio law, we have because I did, the initial draft I had of this, I did have impounding it within a week.
Yeah.
I was told that's not legal, so thanks a lot to the attorneys. But there's a process. I'd like to get to that point.
But whatever that process
Yes.
is, we initiate it immediately on that
Yes.
49th hour.
Yes.
It appears that we have, at least as of 4 years ago, from my experience, we've got a trustee group that will enforce those issues and stand behind it.
And the way it's written, that it won't be a continuation of a problem, that you won't issue the zoning permit the next time because this is a bad apple, and hopefully over time those individuals or those organizations are no longer permitted to do what they've been doing. So
It's my hope when I wrote this, other than a few, well, probably more short-sightedness than I care to admit, but it was just that, right? Sometimes in zoning, we're in a tough spot. We play a long-term game. It's not like things where if you have someone trespassing your property, you can call the police and they're gone right away. But it's a process, it's drawn out. However, given that we have really no ability at the moment to promote anyone good, you know, who's operating this in a fashion that does, you know, meet what the community would like to have, it was my hope that we get, you know, with one side of the community that wants these, not necessarily the, you know, these, we don't want this. If you look at the screen, we don't want this. It's my intent when I wrote this to try to prevent this and try to encourage that. Now, not everyone likes how it goes. I don't like how it goes. I wish we had the ability to act quicker on some things. But the law is just not like that, and sometimes manpower is not like that. It's my intent with this that we catch as much as we can to help promote this and avoid the bad side. And
But I might also add, back to your comment, that when I was an alternate to this committee, okay, I sat out there and actually spoke as a citizen when a car dealership on Colerain Avenue asked for a zoning variance. And in fact, 15 years ago, they had been given a zoning variance that they didn't follow. And so the question came up before this board, why the devil would you ever consider giving them a new zoning variance with conditions if they didn't meet the ones from 15 years ago? And in fact, they were refused. And they sit without their additional property that they wanted. They sit, having to comply, otherwise being cited. And we do have a history, just the short years that I've been here, that if they don't comply, if they come back at us with a zoning variance, we'll get you sooner or get you later, but for crime's sake, we'll get you if you don't consider this zoning to be upheld in Colerain Township, at least now. I can't speak to the past. So,
You're exactly right. We have a few tools we can use to try and promote good behavior and hopefully discourage bad. It doesn't always work perfectly, but especially in the scenario, I believe I know the exact property you're talking about, and in that case, it worked very well. Sometimes it doesn't, but without something to address it,
yeah.
then we don't really have any good way to promote the good ones and keep the bad ones out.
So a question for you. For the 48-hour notice and then the 2 times in a year, is that just per location, per bin, or can we ban companies if they say they have a donation box in one area, a second donation box in another, and a third and a fourth, or however many, if they're found not to be a good steward of caring for one bin and we come back and say your permission has now been revoked, you no longer can have a bin, can they be removed across the board for all of their bins? Or are we just looking at incident per bin, not per company?
We would be focusing on incident per certificate, is the short answer to that question.
So one certificate can have multiple locations on it?
No. One certificate, as proposed here, one certificate would be good for one site, one development site, up to a maximum of 4 bins on a large parcel, but generally, most parcels will be regulated to 2 bins maximum. So that's one part of that. The other part of that would be, the violation would pertain only to that specific certificate. And then the long or sort of other part of answer to that would be, I don't know the answer to if we can ban a company, right? A flat ban. I don't believe that we can. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope someone will correct me. If I am wrong, I don't believe that we can flat out ban a bad acting company from ever applying, from ever being received. I believe it goes case by case, certificate by certificate. If I'm wrong, I know I'll be corrected.
Who is ultimately responsible for cleaning up the area once all this stuff gets like that?
So the ultimate responsibility lies with the property owner.
Property owner.
The ultimate responsibility. So that's who we would go after in the long term. Before it gets to that, we would have revoked the certificate. And then hopefully we would again defer to our wonderful lawyers to have them sort out between the applicant and the property owner. The property owner would probably not be happy to pay the fines of an operator if they were different entities. I'm sorry.
But ultimately, if they did not comply, it eventually ends up in abatement,
That is correct.
which then adds on to the 48 hours, and now we're talking weeks.
I'm sorry.
And so the time for compliance then, so 48 hours passes.
48 hours, yep.
And we give them however much time to comply, to clean it. Then they don't clean it, we re-inspect, then it goes before the trustees, gets voted for abatement. So it could be months before, in theory, that it's cleaned up.
Once you do that, I assume that the rest of the container members will start to come into compliance because they don't want to go through the same legal costs. They don't want to go through the same process. They can see what's ahead. It's one thing if we don't enforce, and that's been a bit of the history here, then nobody pays any attention. But once the first one is taken, and yeah, maybe it takes longer than 48 hours, maybe it takes 2 weeks, okay? But once that enforcement hammer comes down, then it seems to me the message is loud and clear that you clean it up. And I think that issue handles, I don't know that you can handle it any faster than that.
You're exactly right, sir. With the laws as they pertain to zoning violations, it's not a fast-moving animal.
Yeah.
It just, it's unfortunate. On one hand, I kind of wish it was. Well, I definitely wish it was faster. But then there's that whole pesky property rights part from the Constitution that comes up that sort of slows things down. So at least at the moment, the way it's written here in Colerain Township, it is about a 3-week process by the time they would get the trustees to certify that.
And to back him up, it is a fine balance, zoning is, in remembering property rights of individual private property owners with the abilities of the government to do things. I think part of the hope is to get something in place so zoning can go to these property owners and say, hey, we have this, you need to comply. Because at this point, we don't have anything specific for these boxes. This gives us something to where we can go to the property owners and then take legal action from there if the property owner is not willing to do something about it. In my experience, at least with housing court, which is kind of a similar thing, a lot of times it's a private property that there's a bunch of not so pretty junk hanging out on the front. You at least then have something to go to the property owner and say, hey, look, this resolution, you can't be doing this. And a lot of times once you start that interactive conversation, the property owner is willing to make some change, make the corrections before having to go to legal action. And ultimately that saves the township money having legal fees and lets it be handled within zoning and code enforcement.
And to sort of steer us maybe a little bit, I don't want to say back on track, but a sort of the goal of tonight is if we need to make modifications in here, which I believe sounds like we definitely have some modifications to add, that we sort of narrow it down to focus on, okay, it needs, some things can be added here, maybe taken away here, and then we are able to take that and send it to the Board of Trustees for their, they'll, decide whether or not it gets approved or denied flat out. We just, we say, hey, this is what we put together, this is what the community said, this is what the zoning commission said. We kind of package that whole thing up and we give it to them to decide.
So will it come back to us, or you'll take our comments and make those appropriate changes as you've heard from the commission here, and then send that to the trustees, or does it come back for?
That depends on the
approval
motion.
stamp?
Well,
Right.
if I understand correctly, and I'll double check, if they being the trustees, pardon me, were to approve something that was recommended for denial by the zoning commission, they need a majority vote.
Okay.
Which sounds odd, because you think you always need a majority vote, but that's what the Ohio ORC, it's 519.12, I believe, is what is the ORC code addressing zoning text and map amendments. So generally, it would not come back here unless they made some type of special
Well,
circumstance.
as long as the motion is made to accept the wording as stated plus the modifications that were suggested.
Yep.
Okay, if that's the motion, then it doesn't come back to us, it goes right to the Board of Trustees with this wording and the modifications that we just talked about, and they vote on it, and then, 30 days later, that's it, it's in, and then you send the notifications out to the appropriate businesses saying comply or else.
That's almost exactly spot on. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I said, I was almost,
Yes, sir.
a couple of years ago, been,
Kind of doing what's going on.
I did a little research on how this process works before I got up here, yeah.
Appreciate that.
So just to clarify, just for myself, right now today, there's no way to just flat out ban charitable donation bins. And we have before us some text amendment to give us some teeth in the game. It might not be the full bite that we want, but it starts the process to be able to make sure that there's some rules that can be abided by, and for individual bins, we can't ban a company, but individual bins, those at those locations can eventually not have their certificate renewed. So possibly, they can, maybe if they're non-compliant, such as everyone spoke today, it might not be today's wish, but over time, we can start weeding out some of these areas that just aren't favorable for us. But as it is today, there's no banning bins, and we either move forward with modifications or table it, or...
Couple parts on that, if I may. First off, they're not an approved use. So they could be approved as a temporary use, something like that. There would be ways they could go about it. To my knowledge, none of them have as of the moment. So technically, anyone that exists at the moment is a violation per our zoning resolution as it exists now, because they're not an approved use. And any modification to your property without, all falls in that, without a zoning certificate. That being said, charitable donation containers are fairly tricky for municipalities because there is that religious use aspect to them. So you can't put any specific regulations on them that wouldn't be applied to some other use as well. And that's a very kind of deep hole to go down. So, but just touch on that part. And then, if I may, the other part would be we're not allowed. Well, we are not given direction to have any ability to table this. So we would want to either recommend for approval with modifications, or we want to recommend denial to the trustees, is how it should go per what the ORC reads. But by all means, don't, we want to make sure, we package this up well. If it's something we like or don't like, if a few modifications that have been suggested so far, if you believe that goes far enough to get some of the spots here that weren't, that may have been overlooked. And if that's the commission's, it's your prerogative to vote how you feel.
Right. I would say for me, the definition of a charitable bin container needs to be clarified. So that way, some of these book donations that are just so helpful to our community, and seeing thousands of books getting donated to kids is something that I personally would never vote to discourage. But I do see some of the trends that happen with some of the dumping that is happening outside of those boxes. So it's kind of that fine line that we need to ensure that it's a fine line now, but maybe clarify that line a little deeper in the sand here. But I'm not an attorney, so I wouldn't know how to make that distinction in our code here, as well as to what this text amendment would be, what the definition of a charitable donation container really means to us as a township. So I'm not sure how to do that, is what I'm saying.
I understand, and I will, if it's how the commission chooses to vote, if there's a modification to be made to instruct staff to make sure we're not capturing those, as I'm trying to describe now, those smaller kind of community donation containers, like neighborhood donation containers versus these sort of, larger national chain donation containers or national organization donation containers. I could definitely add some language in there to do that, and then also convey to the township administrator, to convey to the board that it's our intent, it's the zoning commission's wishes and desires to not include those small community donation containers in this text.
I think you had it before, you gotta do it by size.
Pardon me?
You gotta do it by size, as you commented before. As soon as you say community is allowed and national's not, then you open your door for a lawsuit. It's gotta be strictly by size, and then go from there. We're still gonna have a problem with those, but we address it in the future.
Probably.
If there's no big box to drop the mattress off, they'll drop it off with the little box.
I don't know how we would stop dumping.
Oh, I know.
Dumping's already
I agree.
illegal.
I agree.
We're not permitting dumping. It's
I know.
already illegal.
Right.
That's right.
But, so is speeding, right? And I'm sure you get the police department in here to talk about that, but,
Well, we're going through a process, and that process is that you create a document. We have a public hearing on that document. We listened to that public hearing. We all had some thoughts as you sent this to our houses for us to review. You've heard those comments. It sounds like maybe the definition should be modified a bit. I think it's the library boxes that I think are the concern, those where you can check a book in, check a book out. You heard my comments about strengthening the litter, the debris, the stuff that shouldn't even be at the boxes, that are around the boxes. I think that's the comments I know that I've heard. I'm not sure what else there was there, but I think those are appropriate for me to move this forward.
Yeah. And the meetings are all taped, so it's a question you can go back and listen to the whole.
So in anything to be donated must be contained within the container.
Yeah.
Sort of what you hit on, Mr. Bachman. And then also we had,
Well, I think that they're responsible for maintaining what's left outside of the boxes.
and that
Yeah,
would
it
still
was-
apply,
Right.
that nothing that cannot be contained within the box is to be donated, is to be accepted.
Yeah, the bottom line is this, is that what I was trying to do was to clean up the language so that it's very clear that the things around it are not appropriate. They need to be removed, as I said in 7B, and then in 12. Just trying to hit it with a sledgehammer versus just a regular hammer here, that it's very clear, because I think that's the issue. That's why the people here in the audience. So let's hit that, and let's be very clear that that it's not appropriate.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion from the commission? Mr. Westfall?
I
Mrs.
motion that we close the discussion portion of the,
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Alec?
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Gearing,
here.
Mr. Westfall, Mr. Bachman,
Yes.
Ms. McMullen.
Yes. All right. And at this point, is there anyone who wishes to make a motion?
I make a motion that we pass the comments for Attachment A, text amendments to Colerain Township zoning resolution governing the use of charitable donation containers with the comments that's been stated. Okay?
My second motion.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second for approving with clarification needed for 7B, 12, and 16.2.
Yeah, correct.
All right, Mr. Alec, can we have a vote, please?
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Gearing,
Yes.
Mr. Westfall,
Aye.
Mr. Bachman,
Yes.
Ms. McMullen.
Yes.
I hope this starts the process, we can get rid of these things.
I agree. Nobody's claiming it.
Won't be fast enough.
All right. All right, we are on number 6 of our agenda. It looks like no informal concept reviews, correct?
That's correct?
Any old business
No, ma'am?
and any new business?
No, ma'am?
Any update from administration?
Not at the moment.
Okay, and I see number 10 announcements.
Yes, at the next meeting, whenever that takes place, we currently don't have a February meeting scheduled. So at the next meeting, if it happens to be in March, I'll be presenting a letter on the township's intention to pursue a gold designation for solar installations from SolSmart. And the basic premise of that is that following that will be a few proposed text amendments, just to increase the ability to apply for and receive solar systems, generally residential, generally, and then some other things kind of coming down further down the pipeline. It's a box we have to check for them to receive certain points that I read to the zoning commission, a letter that the township is pursuing that designation.
Okay.
So do we have a meeting on February 15th?
No, we do not.
We do
Nope.
not.
No, and that's another point too. I know there's been a little bit back and forth, Ms. McMullen, with you and myself. When the agenda, when I mail it out, we haven't hit our deadline yet. So I put it on there. I'd rather it be wrong that, hey, we have one, but we don't, than, oh, we don't have one, but actually, we did get an application in, if that makes sense. I'd rather be wrong on that end. So in between when I mailed that packet to you and this meeting today, our window to apply, the expiration date happened, the deadline. So
Got it.
I apologize for that. It's one of those things.
No problem.
All right, so then without a February meeting, our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Allen, do you want to do roll call?
If you wouldn't mind. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Garing?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye.
Mr. Bachman? Ms. McMullen?
Yes. All right, thank you.
You. Have a good evening. Thank you guys for the good input. I appreciate it.